Good morning, everyone. Everyone have a good time last night? I'm tired. I did want to share with you that at breakfast this morning, I found out that Jim Smith, the CIO from Maine, is also an international spy. Be careful what you say. I do have a few formal announcements this morning. So first, our give back donation total. A total of $2,640 was raised by conference attendees for the Melrose Center. When you add that to NASCIO's match of $5,000 and CompTIA's gift of $5,000, a total donation of $12,640 will be made to the Melrose Center. So thank you, everyone. Nonprofits and charitable organizations like this really need the kind of money and donations that we're able to provide, and that'll go a long way for our kids to continue to improve in the technology area and have access to technology. So thank you very much. Thank all of you who donated. The Twitter contest winners from Tuesday are on the screen. If you're a winner, please pick up your prize from the registration desk this morning. So thank you for tweeting out what it is that we're doing. In the NASCIO Steps Challenge, the total number of steps conference-wide for those participating is 479,548 steps, which is 214.27 miles. So we did a lot of walking. For me, I think most of those were going back and forth between the parties. The person with the most overall steps that we had for the conference is Morgan Reed, so one of our CIOs. Thank you, Morgan. Morgan had 44,802 steps. So Morgan, you can also pick up your prize at the registration desk this morning. I tend to get most of my steps while I'm mowing the lawn at home, and it's because when I'm riding on the tractor, it counts as like I'm running. So in an hour, I can get like 15,000 steps, and I hit my mark for the day. So our first session this morning is on leadership lessons learned outside the office. So I'm really looking forward to this. We get to know folks a little bit better and be aware of leadership that might be happening all around us. These 5 speakers will share with you stories that help to define who they are as leaders. Please welcome our first speaker, Tom Perry, who's the Senior Principal Transformation Consultant at CA Technologies.
If I had a boat, I'd go out on the ocean. And if I had a pony, I'd ride him on my boat. And we could all...
Howdy, folks. So about 3 years ago, I set out to build a sailboat. Sailing was my passion, it was my hobby, and I thought, geez, how tough could this be? Of course, I'd never done this before. So, of course, to do this, step 1, you need to get yourself a plan. So I went out on the internet, found myself a nice plan. It even came with a DVD. That's right, I was set. This was going to be easy. So you get yourself a plan. The next thing you need, well, see, I didn't have any power tools, nothing. So I ran out and got some power tools. This was fun. This was really cool. Oh my God. So we got some power tools. The whole family got into it, and we were set to go. The next step, my brother said, Tom, you should probably read up on this. Okay, because I'd never built a boat before. So I went out and got a few books, read up on the books, and I was pretty sure as a project manager, this was going to be done in a couple months, no problem. Next step, go out, turn on the power saw, put the 2x4 on it, fire it across the garage, into the garage door. The concussion was heard throughout the neighborhood. That turned out in the future to be the sign that Tom is about to injure himself. This is where I started to learn about first aid. First aid came, and I'm here to say I'm not Tommy Nine Fingers, okay? But it was close, very, very close. So the next step at this point is to go ahead and tell your neighbors, tell your family, tell everyone you know you're almost done. At this point, I was 1 year into this project. But I persevered, I hung in there, kept going, finished the job, well, didn't finish the job, unfortunately. I got to that magical point where you say, God, why didn't I build a kayak? Or maybe something in a bottle, yeah? But that's okay. You keep going, you keep pushing. 3 years later, and we're ready for our maiden voyage. You go out, you have a little champagne, you invite a few friends, you go out on the lake, and bam, we sank it. That's right. It went down, and there I was, treading water with the family, and I'm thinking to myself, this was not what I had in mind. This is kind of a painful lesson for me. And looking back on it, I realized that there was one more step I forgot. That's right. Get the wife a fur coat, a diamond, anything she wants. Turns out it was a Great Dane. A Great Dane. Oh my God. So now I'm the proud owner of a Great Dane. But I'd seen this before. I've done this before. I've worked with software teams that have had a hard time breaking things down, that have had a hard time making problems into small enough bite-sized chunks. So it was a haunting reminder, really. And it turns out some problems are just hard. You can't sail half a boat. You got to have the whole thing. So what do we do in situations like this? Well, I came up with a few strategies based on this very personal experience. One, domain knowledge matters. Having some sort of mental model, some sort of concept of how to break things down is very, very useful, very helpful, and unfortunately seems to only come with experience. It also helps if the plan that you have is designed to build things in small testable steps. That may seem obvious, but an awful lot of plans that a lot of our teams work with are these monolithic plans that assume that you've got to deliver the whole thing. You also need a team, but you need a team not for the obvious reasons, but for a much more interesting reason. I need those critical eyes. I need people to look at things and say, Tom, I'm not sure that's the right way to do it. Maybe we should do it this way. And I wish I had spent more time with testing. If I had tested just a little bit more before taking my family out, it would have made a huge difference. So that test-first mentality is important. So 4 things: domain knowledge, design for iteration, having a good team, and test-first approach are all essential to being able to break things down. Those are the lessons I took away from this. Of course, guess what? I got another one in the works. That's right, I'm going to do it again. My wife's already picked out a diamond ring. Yeah. So this sort of taking my hobby has helped me understand what my teams are dealing with when I'm working with them, how we break things down, and how hard it is. So thank you very much. Now, who wants to go sailing?
Good morning. Wait for the slides. That's not one of my slides. So in 1961, President John F. Kennedy went to Congress with a very bold vision. He asked for funding to put a man on the moon, bring him home safely by the end of the decade. And he got it. And about a year later, Congress reached out back to President Kennedy to say, we're concerned. We're not sure that you have the focus, the energy, the alignment of your people to get this done by the end of the decade. So Kennedy went down to what is now Johnson Space Flight Center, and he walked the halls, and he ran into a janitor carrying a mop. And he went up to the gentleman and said, I'm Jack Kennedy. What is it that you do? The guy looked into Kennedy's eyes, and he said, I'm helping to put a man on the moon. And Kennedy wrote back to Congress and said, there's no problem here. And in fact, by the end of the decade, in July of 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon and came home safely. What Kennedy had done was he had ignited the passion and the performance of an entire nation with a higher purpose. The higher purpose was not just the advancement of space travel, it was the advancement of the very frontiers of science and technology and American confidence. So fast forward about 50 years, my wife and I learned a similar lesson on a slightly more terrestrial level. My wife has a small business. Each year she looks for charity events to get her employees involved in. And about 10 years ago, she reached out to the Marine Corps Toys for Tots program. And she asked if she could donate bikes and have her employees deliver the bikes. And they said, more than bikes, what we really need is help. Turns out the Washington area campaign had received more than 2,000 bikes in boxes that year, and Marines were working overtime nights and weekends to build those boxes by Christmas. So my wife and I took her employees, their families, our kids' friends, down to Bolling Air Force Base one Saturday, and we built 150 bikes. And the Marines were incredibly grateful. They said it was by far the highest productivity they'd gotten out of any volunteer team. So the next year, my wife called the Marines and said, can we do it again? They jumped, she mustered. We built 175 bikes that year. The third year, something interesting happened. College-age friends of our kids began contacting my wife in about the October time frame and said, when's the bikes event? We want to make sure we don't miss it. And that was interesting. These were college kids. And we realized that, in fact, we had ignited the passion and the performance of these kids with a higher purpose, helping the Marines build bikes for needy kids. And it resonated with some personal beliefs and ideals of these college kids. They could see the faces of needy children on Christmas morning getting brand new bikes. They could see the Marines giving up their personal time, working nights and weekends. They felt like Santa Claus, they felt like patriots. The fact is, it could have been very, very different. Imagine if instead of saying, let's go help the Marines build bikes for needy children, I had said, hey, I have a really cool idea. I called these college kids and I said, how about we get up at 6 a.m. on a precious Saturday morning, we drive all the way across town and we work in a cold, dusty warehouse turning wrenches and screwdrivers for 6 hours. I probably wouldn't have had anybody next to me. I certainly, if I did, I wouldn't have been able to build 175 or even 150 bikes. The fact is, what we had tapped was the emotion and the real motivation of these kids. Intrinsic motivation, as it turns out, is a very, very powerful booster of both morale but also performance. Everybody in this room is charged with doing more for less. It's just the times that we live in. So here's a freebie. What do we do? How do we ignite our teams? First, figure out what your team's higher purpose is. Every single team, every project, every organization actually has a higher purpose. Figure it out. If you're building a system, for example, for Health and Human Services, in the end, you're probably doing something that affects delivery or quality or access to quality health care for American families. If you're building a system for the Department of Transportation, you're probably affecting the safety of American roads. If you're building a system for the Department of Education, you're doing something to elevate the young minds of a new generation. Figure out what that higher purpose is. Second, internalize it. Figure out how it resonates with your own beliefs and ideals. Third, light up your team. And by this I mean, don't just tell them. It's not a slogan, it's not a sign on a wall, it's not a sentence in a speech. Help them internalize it. Connect the dots. For every single person you have the privilege to lead between what they do day to day and what that higher purpose is. You're turning bricklayers into cathedral builders. And I did this on an interesting project. I had a team of cybersecurity engineers working in a dark windowless room in Northern Virginia, protecting the IT infrastructure for the Federal Aviation Administration. They were good, but they weren't great. I knew they could get further. So we took them on a field trip. We took them into an air traffic control tower, and we asked them to watch an air traffic controller land 150 passengers safely. And we connected the dots between what they do and what that air traffic controller was doing to safely land those passengers. And they were lit up. They felt like heroes overnight. Attrition went to zero, productivity went through the roof. So in a nutshell, figure out what your team's moonshot is and light them up. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maurice Uenuma. I'm with Tripwire. And I'm here to talk about when things go boom, they break, or you suffer a breach. This is about managing chaos and complexity and lessons learned from a prior life. Following my graduation from the U.S. Naval Academy, I spent a decade as an officer in the Marine Corps in a variety of infantry and special operations roles. This included lots of training. It included, of course, no small dose of tedium, and it included real-world deployments to the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia and other desirable vacation destinations around the world. And after 9 years of that, being still a glutton for punishment, I transitioned into the IT field and traded in a blast-resistant vehicle for a snooping coworker-resistant cubicle and immersed myself in the complexities of IT. Now, here's what I mean when I say chaos and complexity. It's about doing inherently complex things that are difficult even under ideal circumstances, with many unknown, unexpected, uncontrollable variables in a contested field, meaning that there are bad guys, which is offensive to the utopian idealists or the postmodern relativists, but they're out there. And so what this can lead to is what we call a fog of war. This is a disorientation, uncertainty about our options, even doubt about ourselves, ultimately leading to a degraded ability to function normally. And as you know, and as I discovered, there's plenty of complexity and even chaos in IT. We give it innocuous names like unscheduled downtime, unreconciled changes, network anomalies, or just incidents. But the effect can be the same. It can be an emotional crisis, and it can be a mental one where we experience a loss of situational awareness, a loss of control, and ultimately leading to a sense of paralysis. So how do we get past this? How do we get from paralysis to decisive action within an environment of chaos and complexity? 3 things to keep in mind. First, we have to understand and keep moving what's called the OODA loop. This is a model for what your brain does and needs to do in a crisis situation, from observe to orient to decide to act. Essentially, data input to contextual information leading to some sort of activity. The challenge is we often get stuck right at the orient, the observe and orient, because we want to collect more information, we want to reduce uncertainty, we want to make sure we've covered all the bases, and we're seeking greater clarity. The problem is we get stuck here in analysis paralysis, and we don't get the OODA loop moving, which is what we need to do, because ultimately when the OODA loop is moving, we're learning, we're adapting, we're adjusting, we're gaining momentum, and the bad guys have to react to us. So it's ultimately not about a 100% solution later, it's about something productive that we can do now to get the OODA loop moving. So how do we move into decide and act? This is where we rely on excellence in the essentials. This is about doing what works most of the time. These are the checklists, the standard procedures, the response plans that reflect wisdom at scale. This is collective insight, experience, expertise that's kind of packaged in a form that's easy to use so that we can take concrete steps and begin to gain momentum. Certainly no shortage of checklists and detailed plans in the Marine Corps, but it's not about rigid adherence to a plan. It's about having a common point of departure, a strong foundation off of which to begin to move and gain ground. And we have that, of course, in IT and cyber. These are just examples, but things like the CIS critical controls provide a focus of effort, a prioritized list of things to do, and a good point of departure. Now, none of us as leaders have a monopoly on insight or wisdom. We actually need the insight and wisdom of everyone on the team. So in order to get that, as leaders, we have to communicate. Even if we don't have all the answers, even if we have to ask things that we don't want to ask, and we don't always have a plan for everyone. Because the goal is to get the collective OODA loop going, right? As an organization, as a group, move past the analysis paralysis and begin to move effectively. So to summarize, it's about clarity through action, right? It's about a bias for action. By having a fast, effective OODA loop, relying on excellence in the essentials, and working strong as a team. Chaos and complexity are a reality of life and work, but as my fellow Marines in 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines did in April of 2003, crossing into Baghdad across a broken, bombed-out bridge under fire, they got to the other side, and so can you. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Amy Glasscock with NASIO. So we're going to the other core now. When I married my husband, Will, a little over 6 years ago, I did so knowing full well that before we settled down and started a family and did all of those things that everyone expected us to do, we were going to spend 2 years in the Peace Corps, sweating, wearing crazy fabrics, and saving the world. And I married him anyway. At the time, we were working as trade association lobbyists in Washington, D.C. When we found out we had been assigned to work as English teachers in Indonesia, I would lay in my very comfortable bed at night in my climate-controlled condo. We were very fancy. And I would wonder what it would be like to sweat all day, if I would have to cover my hair in the world's largest Muslim country, if I would be dodging volcanoes or tsunamis, and what it would be like to go without toilet paper for 2 years. By the time we had put all of our things in storage and said many cheerful goodbyes, we knew the only thing left to do was just go for it. Turns out that giving up creature comforts isn't that hard. You expect things to be different. It's only weird at first, not just the toilet paper. And the first few months are so exciting and stimulating that you don't care that you don't understand what anyone is saying or that people are staring at you wondering what this white girl's doing in their village. It also helped that our first few months were in a beautiful mountain town. I had a wonderful host family, and I was making a lot of new Peace Corps friends. But then the honeymoon phase wears off, and culture shock sets in. The Peace Corps gives you this great graph that plots all the highs and lows of your 2 years of service, and it is remarkably accurate and reassuring. Every now and then we would go back to it to make sure we were on track. So culture shock hits you right about the time you leave all of your new friends and head to your permanent site. And unlike most volunteers, I was married, so I had that built-in support. And I also had some wonderful teachers in my new school. I was assigned to work at a madrasa, which in Indonesia is just a public high school with a few extra religion classes. Obviously, I was the only non-Muslim, but they welcomed me with open arms, and no, never asked me to cover my hair or change my beliefs. We've probably all started a new job and looked for that one person to take us under their wing. For me, that was Mrs. Kiswati, or Boo Kiss as I called her. My first day of school, I sat in the teacher's lounge without my own desk, sticking out like a sore thumb, and realized that everyone was speaking Javanese, not the Indonesian language I had been studying for the last 10 weeks. Boo Kiss looked at me and said, sympathetically, "I know how you're feeling." From then on, she and I became great friends. Will and I spent a lot of time with Boo Kiss, her husband, 3 girls, and later her new baby boy. I learned a lot about Indonesian schools and culture and Islam from her. And through our friendship, she came to realize that dubbed episodes of the American TV shows Growing Pains and Friends weren't the best representation of American culture. Eventually, that culture shock wore off, and I settled into the rhythms of our new life. One of the most surprising joys of Peace Corps was the creativity that comes from limited resources. After several months of eating delicious Indonesian food, it was not so delicious anymore. So we found some cheese and some local ingredients and made a pizza. We're not going to win any photography awards with this, but the fact that we took a picture tells you everything you need to know. We would use anything we could find locally to make food that was familiar to us. We became pretty decent cooks, making eggplant parmesan, biscuits and gravy, pumpkin pie, meatloaf out of tempeh, and every Peace Corps volunteer's favorite Mexican food. You appreciate the little things. After sweating it out for several weeks or months, it would be time for a trip to the city or to one of Indonesia's amazing beaches. 3 hours on a couple of rickety buses and 1 hour on a plane, and we'd find ourselves in Kuta, Bali, or the Myrtle Beach for Australian tourists. We would unapologetically seek out American comforts like Burger King or Dairy Queen, not exactly our ideal date night in our DC days, or now for that matter, but I cannot overstate the level of anticipation and excitement that a Western meal, an air-conditioned hotel room, and a cold beer can create in the heart of a Peace Corps volunteer. A little bit of deprivation makes life so much sweeter. The best lesson I brought home with me, though, was probably patience. After ridiculously crowded buses, being forced on stage to entertain people, attracting the kind of attention that only an alien landing should deserve, or yes, a volcano cutting a conference short, a delayed flight now and then isn't such a big deal. Commitment, relationship building, creativity, appreciation of the little things, and patience. We'll call those leadership lessons. 2 years later, I carry those lessons with me daily, and thanks to the miracles of modern technology, Bukis and I are still comparing notes. this time on raising babies. Terima kasih banyak. Thank you so much.
Didn't hear that one coming. You guys are amazing back there. Give these sound and light people a hand. They've been just doing great the entire time. Can't do it without them. Awesome folks. Emily, if she keeps me to 5 minutes here, wins the superhero of the award because I generally can't just go 5 minutes. My life was kind of a strange one. Had lots of different hairdos through my life, and you know, I've had one of those just blessed lives and just have worked with some amazing people, amazing masters, and a lot of you, and I really cherish that and appreciate it a lot. Trying to find the thread of how to connect music and martial arts and come on, baby, you can come. All together in one thing it's been a really different life. Had a lot of hairdos across the way, but there's a couple common threads. Head banging, getting banged in the head, and both concurrently at the same time. So it's been a really, really interesting, fun life. And I know a lot of you CIOs out there can appreciate this a lot, but we had a fun time talking about martial arts injuries and things like that, and it's just a lot of laying yourself on the line for your friends and trusting your friends and pulling people together. Music, you may think, is an industry of cool, and in many cases, it kind of is. But that's the theatrical part. What's behind all of that are the light and sound people, the people that build the stage, the people that put up the scaffolding. It's the business of connecting great talent, and many times with great talent you get great egos. But at the end of the day, it's sight and it's sound, and it's the combination of all these things and all that tireless rehearsal and blowing through scales, so at the moment you perform, you're not thinking. You're just reacting and listening and reacting to each other and living in that moment. That's where the special, really great people live. In martial arts, it's the science of hurting people. Oh yeah, crashing nerve clusters, breaking bones, getting knocked out. Happened to me several times. It is that. Martial arts is that. But it's a heck of a lot more than that. Our new employee orientation, I expect certain tenets out of all of my staff, and I say this at new employee orientation every single time. Courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, indomitable spirit. That's what I want of you. And if you think of Taekwondo, Hapkido, the Do's, Aikido, Do is way of life, a way of thinking and living and combining all of your assets of mind, body, and spirit to become the optimal person you can be. But it's also the practice of building leaders. And in just about every martial arts style that I've studied, whether it's in China, Korea, the Japanese styles, they use martial arts to build the next civic leaders and to instill that discipline. Information technology, of course, we think of it as boxes and wires and items, and I love gear. I just love gear. I just do. But it's not the boxes and wires, it's what they do that really matter. In government, it's the instrument to help when civic event happens, when we've got to react to a crisis, when a life event happens for a person, and we need to really jump up and give them their help. The boxes and wires are what make that magic happen. But it's really the impact on people, connecting people with technology and dealing with those civic events and really providing service for all of those folks in Minnesota, which are our brothers and sisters, our fathers, our kids, our next door neighbors. At the end of the day, that's what we're in business for. We're not there to hug our servers anymore. We're here to do this. How do we kind of glue martial arts and music and those disciplines together? And yeah, it's head banging, banging heads, and both concurrently, and it's a whole bunch of hairdos and all those kind of things. But it's also finding a way to bring the best out of yourself, the best out of your team, and counting on every single person. We've got 2,000 people that work for our organization, and I believe my job is to make every single one of them amazingly productive and just love their position. And it's this whole commitment to being better. It's the commitment to practicing so many times that you don't think about it anymore. You just do great things. It's about that commitment to the team and working at that speed of trust. When I came into the position, day one, didn't have it. Now I think we have it and we're getting many more things done. But it's that commitment deep down in your DNA, that commitment to the state, the commitment to your purpose that matters. And when the years catch up with all of us, and they're catching up with me, I can tell you that. It took me a little while just to stand up from my chair. And we've lived all of our life. We just need to know that we've left this place a little bit better than when we got here. Because I'm working on my fourth hairdo right now, and it's the Minnesota hockey flow, by the way, if you're wondering. Because 6 weeks ago, I became a grandpa. And yeah. And I stopped and I held that baby and I went, that's why I'm doing this. But we can't leave it ignite on such a solemn note. So I want to do something with all of you, and I want you all to be a great musician, a black belt, and a nerd all at the same time. Do you think you can do this? Trust me, you can do this. So everyone pick up your phone. Everyone's got to have a phone. Everyone's got a phone. You got a phone. By the way, in martial arts, this is a weapon. When you're getting attacked in the back alley, you turn on the video and go, don't attack me, I'm recording this. And you know how to use the phone, so you're a technologist, but now I need a drummer. So I'm going to ask you to bang your phone on your table. We won't break the table, but it's a rhythm that goes like this. 2, 3, 4. Again, 3, 4. A little bit louder now. I'm going to warn him that you might want to watch my fader. Keep it coming. You can do it. Louder. A little more. Yeah! Stand up and shout! One more time. Keep it coming. We've lost you. We've lost you. 2, 3, 4. All right, we got it. Yeah! Stand up and shout! All right, we got it. Allergies will do it to you. You guys all rock. You're black belt, great drummer, nerds. Good work.
I am constantly amazed at the truly inspiring people that we have just surrounding us every day. These wonderful people were able to share their stories with us, but you all have them. We all have them with the people we work with. It's a great organization. Your stories inspired me. The sort of common themes of being able to react and plan and inspire and have a mission, right? That all of those things just resonate with me very much. So thank you for sharing your stories with us. I really enjoyed them. I would like everyone to thank our speakers for sharing their stories with us today.